Hello everybody and welcome to part 2 of mixing your own Wappel oils, and that's what we're going to call them because that's what the label says. Here, let me get a little better focus for you on this maybe. Now, I'm just going to go over some of the materials. It's, again, not that different than what we did in round 1. However, these guys over here, this is what's real different. Yes, indeed. Fluorescent oils. And I can tell by the way they're driving the camera bonkers that they're actual fluorescents, not just, well, they're sort of like just phthalo green and some kind of orange in a container. Look at that. Look at that. Both of these driving the camera just as bonkers. So that to me says success. Now there are also blue, magenta. There are, gosh, at least 4, maybe 5 other of these fluorescents, but these are the 2 we use the most. Want to give them a shot. I have also told you about after you sort of start with your basics, right? Your umbers and a lot of these sort of things. Your greens, blues, reds, umbers, whites, ochres, that sort of thing. You start to go into, well, the specialty range. And you've seen me use things like ultramarine violet here. You've seen me use the chronacronome, essentially like kind of a more magenta version of alizarin crimson. Here's a couple other more specialty colors. Now, these are not cheap, especially the brown matter. Not cheap at all. But I've been wanting to use this one on miniatures for a while. We have not used this since I started doing the oil brusher things, my own oil brushers. So I got to get this going. And I have wanted cerulean blue for the longest time. It's a different, it's not just a different color. It's not like miniature paint where I need that color blue. This has different properties. This is more opaque. Just like this is more opaque. These are going to be super translucent. I might make myself another container of Payne's Gray just because I use it a lot. But I also wanted, the reason that's out is because I don't know if I've ever really used this stuff. Maybe I used it in the very early days. And this is ivory black, and I want to show you what the difference is between these two. I think you can see right here that one is more blue and one is more just kind of a dead black. This is a much warmer black. Basically, this is more brown in it. This is more blue. So I want you to see the difference between those two. And then there's this one. I never made one out of this. And it is, the reason I've got that cadmium green, so you can see this one has a little bit different flavor to it. And we have used acrylic colors similar to this. I just want to see what this will do. Just want to see what that's going to do. Also, we have, for all intents and purposes, 3 brands of paint here. Obviously, this one and this one, but the Wintons, they are different. They are a student grade. But check this out. I never realized, I just thought that they changed the design on the containers. I never realized this was a student grade color here. So, but this has served me well. Look at it. I mean, you know how oils go very far. Oh, and they're made in France. Interesting. Well, anyways, I wanted to show you this too. I thought this could be valuable for you to see. And the Wittens, those are in those starter sets that you see all the time, like so. The other thing, other items that are handy to have, pipettes don't hurt. These bottles certainly don't hurt. I believe these are the 1-ounce bottles. I do also have these. I thought these were 1 ounce, but they came in maybe a 2.5 or 3-ounce jar. I don't know. But this is what I typically put our white spirits in. And I'll try and get maybe some Winsor Newton and some whole. I try and get other versions of this type of stuff. Then we can try it out because not all of you can get the Mona Lisa brand. And this way we'll know for sure is there any real difference. Now, we all have things like this, right? So we could mix the oils in here too, right? But I like to keep these actually for things like the crushed glass snow because of this little, actually it's not too bad for mixing your oils either. It's that little channel right there. Wouldn't make a bad temporary palette either. Tiny little sponge in here. Actually, I just gave myself an idea. So we're not using that for oils. However, look at this. I could probably mix at least 4 colors in here. One sort of on each side of this. Here's another one of those clamshell style blister packs. I just chopped it in half, and there's 2 of those. And then here, Reaper Miniatures has the blister packs. These are Dark Sword blisters right here. So we'll mix paints in these guys too. This is something you can just throw away because there's really no way you can get every last bit of paint out of there. Now, if I was going to make these thin, super thin, there's also something like this. However, unless you clean them right away, these are sort of a one-shot deal right here. So we've got our jars, we've got our paints. We're just going to have some beat up, junky old, here we go, some more beat up old craft brushes like this that we are going to use. We hopefully got some paper towels handy because we're definitely going to need those for sure. Need lots of those. And what we're going to do is we'll start off with the fluorescents. Okay, then we're going to move to these Winsor Newton, and then we'll see. Again, I want you to see a comparison between these two, but these are the 3 things. We'll see just how transparent. So we got opaques here. This one's going to be more opaque as well. These 2 should be very transparent or translucent and take less of the white spirits, but we'll never know until we try, and we're going to do that next. Let's start off with our fluorescent paints here. We'll do the orange first, and I know people, they really want, well, we measure this in here and this in here, and we mix them together at these precise amounts, and sadly, it just don't work that way. This is the only way it's going to work, and sadly that is to take yonder fluorescent paint and we give it a squeeze here. Holy smokes, that's thicker than I thought it was. Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Man, that's thick. Oh, but you talking about peanut butter? That kind of just looks. Never mind. Wow. All right. That's almost powdery. Okay, so opinion changed. Interesting. A little more here. Why not? It's a big old container. Wow. That is interesting. Very interesting. Oh my, it looks like it's neon. That's freaking hilarious. Look at that. That is unbelievable. Look at this thing. Well, I wish I could do a freaking screen capture of that. That is insane. All right, sorry. All right, let's do it. Look at it. There's only one way to do this. We pour and we mix. It's the only way to do this. Well, it feels like oil paint. Who knows? I wasn't sure. Is this going to break down when we start to thin it down? Is it going to be okay? What's going to happen here? Now, I don't have the labels printed up for these right now. I have the leftover brown matter that I never actually put on there. So we'll throw the one label on there, kind of in the after party or something like that, maybe. But for the final photos, I'll print out some labels. But you can see this is nowhere near thin enough. But it's not separating or anything weird. Anything like I didn't know it's not turning into cottage cheese or anything. Again, nothing weird. But oh, hey, you want some bright orange? Huh? You want some bright orange? Check that out. That is insane. Wow, that really, it's going to take a fair amount of this right here. Now, if I mix too much, whatever, too much of the white spirits, I can always throw more paint in there. And I know I've kind of bandied about the 50-50 mix. Well, that could be totally wrong. It could be 70-30. There's only one way to do this, and it's sort of like plaster. It's not like baking, where you have measuring cups or droppers and 3 drops to this, 2 drops to that. Besides, every oil is different. Not everybody is able to get Winsor Newtons. Sometimes they're getting something else. Look at this. Even with as much, see, that is not going to, it's thin, but that's not going to, I don't know, get down in that jar. And that looked like a little lake. That looked absolutely like a little lake of white spirits. And yet, oh my God, look at this. You can't even see the brush. You can't even see the brush. Wow. That is too cool. That is sensational. All right, well, here we go. Let's throw some more in there. I have no idea. This could end up being too thin. It could end up being too thick. But in any case, wow. Again, not separating, so that's actually already the first test passed, because I didn't know what to expect with this. I'm not kidding. That is most definitely fluorescent. Well, we are certainly going to have ourselves some... Wow, yeah, I'm going to have to get the... I'm going to get the magenta. I'm going to get the yellow as well, because, well, golds, right? Don't we use a lot of the fluorescent yellow in our golds? So I'm thinking this is not too... Now look at that. See, that's not really going to flow into the container. So guess what? You got to use more white spirits. This could be the last mix right here, I'm going to say. Now I realize this is not like the most gripping television in the world right here, but just like the last one, in part one, what was the emphasis? It was on the conversation about the consistency of the paint, not so much what's happening as I mix each layer or each portion here. But that's going to need some more. It still needs more of the... And look, it's not taking away any of the fluorescent. It's still driving the camera zonkers. Wow. Let's put some more. Let's do I'm thinking this is the last one. I know I've said it twice already, but that could do it. There's also the test of, does it fall into the container? If it falls into the container, well, then it's thin enough. If it sits there, and you'll see, because it happened in the last video, there's a couple of real stubborn ones where the container quite literally was spitting it back out at me. It was like somebody was pressing it from the inside and shooting the paint back up at me. It's really getting close. Oh, that is ever so close. See how it's starting to... But you can't see it. Good grief. Wow. Boy. Well, I think I'm going to give it a few more drops just to make it flow as easy as possible. But I think we're there. I think we have arrived at the point of placing this color into the container. Wow. And it's still it's luminous. Oh, wow. That is most definitely luminous. So we have not killed the fluorescent nature of the paints. First, though, we must get rid of all the... Oh, that's flowing pretty nice. My assumption here, and, well, we all know what the first three letters in assumption are, but I do believe this will go in here. So not a ton. This is not the fastest process in the world. Is it flowing all the way down through here? So I'm not cutting it off at the top. I'm getting the brush down in here. I'm actually cutting it off there. So I'm waiting for that to flow down a little bit more, because otherwise it's just going to all pile up here. I guess. Now remember, I also have to have my agitator. And actually, I have a whole thing of new agitators. I think in between these segments here, I'm going to go grab all my... So that is... It's sort of... And I'm trying to, especially initially here, I'm really wanting to keep that up along the top edge there. It's starting to flow down the side. And I'll rotate it, and I'm going to put it here on a different side. Now, is this going to fill up this entire container? Most certainly not. I might even have to add some more paint to it to fill it up. Well, I certainly will have... That's going to be a bit much. See how that gave me a little air bubble right there and pushed back at me? That is... Well, it is starting to... Okay, it's starting to end up down towards the bottom, so I think we're good. That was just me getting a little bit impatient and taking too much, trying to get too much down. And also I can just kind of do this. If it starts to build up around the edge like that. Here, let's gather this up. And also, too, the mix might not be totally even. That is why I like to have actually the agitator in there. And I sort of do the final mixing once the stuff's in the container. To me, that's kind of a better plan. All right, I think we're going to have a decent amount in here. Like I said, this might fill half the container, maybe 40% of the container. Depends on how. Oh, there's still a fair amount here. So this will easily fill up 40% of it, possibly half. I can always add more. I mean, I've got a big old tube of that stuff. But I think you also saw on those older tubes of the Wintons there, and even the older tube of the Van Dyke Brown, you get that nasty gunk that sort of piles around that opening of your tube of paint. That just kind of happens with tubes of paint. Over time, it just does that. And that's why it does to the oil brushes. You saw that. Now that the oil brushes, I've had those long enough, I have seen what happens to those as they age. This is fascinating. I mean, this container here. Now, it's starting to resist a little bit, but look at that. It's gone all the way down. Oh, wow. We actually might fill up. Geez, this might fill up 2/3 of this container. I guess I did more than I thought. Apparently so. And like I said, I wish I could give you some kind of, you do 20% this and 3 drops of that. There is no such thing. And that's how oils are just going to be for you. It's going to be that trial and error, get used to it, experiment. You'll just have to kind of see for yourself. That's about a bit more of this here. And another. We're almost there. Yeah, you can see that's starting to resist a little bit, so it could have been a little thinner. Do I add some more of the white spirits in? I don't think I have to. I mean, now that it's in there, I don't really care. I'm just going to get this last bit of it into my container here. Boy, that really filled that up. And remember, I'm not going to be using that much fluorescent. How much fluorescent paint do you see me using on even sometimes larger scale projects, I guess, if you want to call them that? Yeah, see, that's starting to resist me a little bit. It's also the container's getting kind of full. Now, the other thing you can do is actually you can drop the agitator in there, and that'll also sort of help it. Just want to get as much of this as I can. The waste not, want not in me wants not to waste. Now that's a good. See, this is another thing too. So that kind of is creating a little bit of suction. Look at that. It's another little trick. I think we learned that in the last video. And like I said, this is going to be messy. You are going to want to have lots of paper towels on hand. In our, oh my gosh, we used to just refer to them as paint rags in our art class and art school. And people would quite literally just kind of heist each other's paint rags because we used so many of them. And if you ran out in the middle of a painting session, well, you weren't exactly going to go to the store to get some more. All right, that is relatively full. Like, wow, very full. Okay, good to know. We are going to give that top of the jar a little bit of a clean. Now we're going to locate our sprue. I guess I'm going to have to go get some of the rest of my sprues. But this is a perfect size. I wish I didn't have to use this one, but I'm going to throw a second one in here. I'm going to throw a second sprue piece in here. I'm going to go double agitator on this. And remember, pewter is not going to, it's not going to, it'll tarnish a little bit, but it won't rust. And that's the big key, is it's not going to rust on you. Just going to get some of this further down into the jar, because I got to get my cap on there too. So here's our little squirt thing. Also trying not to shoot fluorescent paint all over myself. So I think we were successful in that mission. Get another paper towel here. And then our cap. It locks into place. We hear them agitators going. Real nice. Bam. Bam. There we go. Now I'm just going to start off with the other fluorescent paint here. It may not show you the whole thing of filling the bottle. You know how to do that. But I do want you to see, because I want to see. And if I were you, I'd want to see too, just exactly what's going to happen once we start to get this out of the container here. Wow. Interesting. All right, let's see if this is as solid as the other. All right, so this is not as solid. Look at that. Now, maybe it's just not as dry. I don't know. Maybe the other one was older and drier than that, but see, that didn't quite create that little log like the other one did. That's a little different consistency. It's reasonably similar there. Okay, get our cap back on. Yeah, see, that is not quite as luminous as the orange is. Interesting. Okay, let's compare it to. Well, it's also a little bit darker. Now, maybe if we combine this with the fluorescent yellow, also that can make a difference. Now I'm gonna actually grab a different brush here. Just give me a second. I'm just gonna add a whole bunch of this because I had to keep adding more and more and more last time. So the heck with it. I'm just gonna go for it here. If I need to, I'll just add more paint. Let's see, that is not quite as luminous as the orange. Interesting. Now, this is something I would expect, say, from the blue fluorescent paint. They might even have like a purple or a violet or something like that. It's not that this is not bright. This is pretty intense. Don't get me wrong. It is not quite driving the camera as bonkers as I thought it was going to. Again, no separation here. No need to worry about that. I'm just going to continue my mixing. This also is a bit, it's interesting. It came out of the tube more of a soft type of thing, whereas the other one came out like really looking like frozen peanut butter. Yeah, this has more chunks in it. The other one didn't have quite the kind of chunks that this does. So I'm going to have to really be vigorous here in the mixing process. And by vigorous, I mean I'm really hammering away at this. I had to actually lift it up off the table so that I didn't shake the camera. It's a little bit like I don't know, you're making frosting or something, and you've tried to impart the butter into your powdery ingredient, your dry ingredients, and you've got all those little nodules of butter still. That's kind of what I'm fighting against here. I expect this to happen when I do the ivory black, actually. All right, we know it's time for more of this. That, I'm pretty sure, is going to be the last dose of the white spirits that I need here. I'm really glad I used one of these deeper containers like this, because this is rigorous. So while it's harder to get out of this container, it's also harder for the stuff to escape while you're trying to mix it. So something to think about. Now that I think the chunks are starting to go away, there's still a few left here. I just basically have to kind of take the brush and smush those. There was one or two, I think, that happened in the orange mix, but this definitely has a lot more to it. See, that is not as luminous. Now it almost looks a little bit. Oh, I'm gonna turn up the. I got the whatchamacallit turned down, the brightness turned down on this. Here, let me use my paper towel over here and get that picked up. It's definitely, see, when I pick that up and see the residue that it leaves behind right there, that tells me that it's intense. I mean, I also had the color intensity turned down a little bit just because. I don't know. Let's see. A little more. A little more. It's weird on camera. It doesn't look quite as yellow as it does in person here, but maybe that's the fluorescence. It could just be the fluorescent nature of it, because, well, the orange looks a little bit wacky on screen as well. Now, as I look at this, yeah, that is not quite so luminous there. Okay, so good to know. Maybe now the fluorescent blue probably won't be very luminous, so maybe I won't get that one, but I still want to target the magenta. Now, well, we'll find out if this is going to be thin enough to flow into a jar. Is everybody ready? Like I said, you don't have to see the whole process of this. You just saw it before. However, I do want to see how this flows in here for sure. And I'm going to do my little thing where I rotate it around the side here. It helps it from building up too much in the one spot. It could do with a little bit being a little bit thinner, but I think we'll be all right here. And remember that little trick of squeezing the jar. The paint starts to come out, but then it's almost like a tsunami where the water gets pulled out, and then next thing you know, it all comes back in again. So yeah, now that only will work once there's enough paint down in the bottom. You have to get some paint all the way down. It is starting to run down the sides a little bit. Not quite, maybe. I don't know. I don't want it to be too thin. It's easier to make paint thinner once it's out of the jar than it is to thicken up the paint that's in the jar. I mean, that's kind of impossible. Once the lid's on, the lid's on. That's how it is. But we're having a little bit of fun here, just kind of mixing up our. Yeah, I might even try, say, in another video, just to maybe just mix a couple of oils together and see if I can make essentially like a new color, something that I use all the time instead of having to necessarily kind of mix it on the palette. What if it's something I already have? I have done that with primers, more so to help folks that just they want to prime something and then just do like washes over it. It's all kind of stuck on the sides right now. This is going to fill up this container pretty good too. So we've been successful in figuring out, I think now I'm getting a handle for just how much goes in these. because I think on some of the first containers that I did, I didn't really necessarily get those filled very much. That's why I basically kind of have to make another Payne's Gray container, because I think it might have been one of the first ones I did, and I didn't quite know just how much to put in there. Well, yeah, this container is gonna be darn near full here. Again, it's still a bright green. It's not like it's a dead green or anything. It's brighter than either. Well, the cadmium green is sort of bright because by virtue of all the yellow that it has. See, look at that. That flows. That's an awful lot like a miniature paint, I would say. So what I'm going to do here is just fill out the rest of this container, get my agitator in there, and then we'll come back, and the next one we'll do is the cerulean blue and the brown matter. And I think I'll also, if I can snag the Migamo oil brusher that I'm trying to basically recreate. So here we're going to do this little thing, and then see how I get sucked down in the, wow, there's all kinds of empty space in there now. So that little trick works, and I think I cleared out enough space for what's left here. All right, so I think we're good to go. And next up is cerulean blue and brown matter. And we'll do that next. Let's try our other colors here. We'll do some of the cerulean blue. Now, that should be interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's about the same consistency of the other two, and I'm gonna say that's enough. I don't know, even that might have been too much. I don't know. But you can see it's a darker, it's not a super bright sky blue, but it's just it was my favorite watercolor blue, actually. I really enjoyed using that. So in goes our all white spirits, and you can see that's, to be honest, a lot of the fluorescent blue would look a lot like cerulean blue. You can see it has a little bit of a greenish tint to it. This is what I would really be targeting for some of the armor colors, especially the sky earth armor. So you'll be seeing this a lot in those situations. You'll see it when we do a lot of the moonlit stuff too. Now you can tell, look at how thick this color is. It's in watercolor terms, it's got sedimentation. Look at it almost looks kind of fluorescent here. It actually kind of looks, it looks about as much as the green as far as on the scale of making the camera go a little bonkers here, which is intriguing. That's why it makes a good sky color, because it looks like almost like a grayish blue when you first start using it, but next thing you know, you say, oh, that's a little more intense than I thought it was. We're just really giving this a good old stir right here, and we are definitely going to need some more good old white spirits poof in there. And just using my blister pack, got it all kind of set off to one side. It's got a reasonably high sides to it, so it shouldn't have too much escaping paint here. Yeah, just making sure that I get rid of, so we got some lumpiness in here too. I mean, we wouldn't notice this if we were just doing regular oil painting, especially if I was using a palette knife, would be none the wiser. I'm only noticing it here because, well, I'm trying to make it extra, extra thin to that miniature paint consistency. All right. That's, see, that to me is nice. I definitely need another shot of it here. So you can see we're going to go through we may go through that entire container to do all these colors. Now I got some more of the the sprues out, some metal sprues. It's getting reasonably. Look at that. Look at how that's just kind of being moved around just by the brush. So that's I don't think I want to add any more of the white spirits in there. I think this may be as thin as any of the colors that I've done, which is not horrible because where this is going to be used. Actually, I'm looking forward to doing some icy type stuff here, some blue flesh tones, maybe some crazy flesh tones like that. There's, oh gosh, what would you go? There's core colors. There's just colors that are really hard to mix. Yes, with red, yellow, and blue, and maybe a white, you can mix anything. As I make the air quotes that I can't do right now because my hands are kind of full of stuff. Well, and let's get the rest of this mixed up. You know, there, get this in here. Cerulean blue. It's just one of those colors that's hard to make. And I think Kathy and we had this discussion. There's just some colors, I think I've had it with other people too. Faded ultramarine, you could make that color, I suppose. So you could mix some things and end up with it. Kathy, I know there's certain colors she goes, man, I just made snakebite leather. But okay, the snakebite, it always had its own unique kind of properties to it. Look at that. Look at how that's flowed right down to the bottom. So this is actually the first time I've really gotten the thinness that I wanted to get to make this process go a little bit faster and a little bit easier. Now this is where I could potentially maybe even take the pipettes or something and really sort of squeeze this stuff in there, but I'm gonna go with the brush here, the more traditional. I don't think I can pour this in. Yeah, that's not going to really let me, well, maybe it will let me do some of that. That's how thin that is. That's actually letting me pour that in. So that's almost on the too thin side. Which again is okay because this is the purpose I'm going to be using this for. It'd be thinned down a whole bunch anyway. Wow, this is the first time I've been able to do something like this with the oils. Okay. That is really thin. And of course, how often I say, every single one of these paints is different. This is not like the miniature paint, where basically when you have a red, a green, a black, or whatever, the paint is basically the same thickness. One might be a little more transparent than the other, but their physical, just how thick or literally thick or thin they are, that doesn't really change. Not like this. Not quite like this. Now, there's some of this stuff that is thicker here. So it's good to know that I can actually make stuff that is thinner. Get that down in that jar a little bit faster. It takes a little less time. You saw that. The funnel, yeah, I could have used that funnel, but everything it's got to go through, like the pipette or the funnel or whatever, it's using that much. You can see how much is still sitting here in my little mixing area. Now, of course, that is not very much. It's just kind of pennies on the dollar, really, when you think about it. But oils, they are still to me, they are definitely a cheaper medium than anything else that's out there. All right, I'm going to just say that is good enough. And this, I'm just going to have to chuck that thing because I can't use the other side. All right. You've noticed I also kind of been working from the lighter colors to the darker ones so that maybe I can sort of reuse the brushes. So again, another sprue here. Let's snip off some of these guys. It's a Reaper Weapon sprue. And it's kind of handy because, well, once I get to thing where there's 2 prongs, that's about the right size for an agitator. Now, I don't need a second one in there. That's pretty darn thin enough. Oops, almost got out ahead of myself here. Heck, that's how excited I am to have cerulean blue. I have wanted this color for quite a while, but it's not the cheapest color. It's definitely not the cheapest color. All right, and now you can hear it snap into place. We hear that good old sound of an agitator, and bango, there we go. We got cerulean blue. And now, I don't want to throw a sword in one of these things. Let me get these weapons out of the way here before I accidentally just chuck one of those in instead of a sprue. Now the oil brusher that I'm hoping this. Oh yeah, that's gonna be pretty close. It's in some ways, I think when people see it, it's gonna resemble burnt sienna. But now look at how that's thinner. See, that is, this kind of looks like something else too, but it looks like brown matter, a different kind of matter. But get our cap on there again, and we're not going to use that brush. We'll use this one here, and we're going to start off with that. I'm going to have to probably put some more paint in here. I don't think I have all that much paint. But see, this is, yeah, it's more along the lines of, say, a burnt umber. It's more of a reddish color. It's the intensity of it. But to me, it's not as translucent as, say, a burnt sienna is. A burnt sienna is kind of on the translucent side. It's one of the reasons why it makes a good rust color. But guess what? So will this. I think this will be a nice, that red rust, that dark rust, whereas burnt sienna is kind of your classic orangey rust. There. None too shabby. We'll certainly mix a little bit more of our white spirits into this. All right. Now, what's been interesting is there's a lot of folks that are starting to use oils here. As I was hanging out in other people's Twitch streams before filming this, and guess what? Every person I was watching they were using oils, and they had just got them. It was basically their first or second time using the oils, and which just puts me in mind to say you gotta be patient with yourself. And look at this. I mean, all I'm doing is just thinning down these things in a freaking blister pack, and I'm learning stuff about these colors as I go along, learning about the properties of those fluorescent paints. So it's going to be a learning process. It's even if you've used oil paints like I have for 2D art, this is a different animal right here. This is something we never did in our art school. The last thing we did was sit there and start thinning down our oil paints like this. That is not something that we did. And I was actually using them. I kind of used a palette knife. There was one point where, because they used such harsh, cheap spirits, like literally the cheap $2 dime store stuff, that I couldn't stand the smell of it, and it kind of was giving me bad reactions. So I just used a palette knife. I never used the brush. I didn't need to use any of that cleaning stuff because I was using palette. I wasn't using a brush. Or if I did use a brush, all I did was just use the paper towel to wipe it clean, and that was about it. But the majority of the work happened with a palette knife. So that's going to have to be the last dose, I think. As much as I'd like to keep putting more in there, I want this to be somewhat on the thicker side. Not quite like the cerulean blue. Be fun to be able to pour. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's a little more liquid than I thought it was. Like I said, it's a learning process. You will all learn as you go along, just like me. I mean, heck, We can all learn stuff. All of that is a nice, deep, rich. It's if you basically took something like, say, maybe a alizarin crimson and raw umber and mixed those together, you might get this. To me, this is a little bit more of a, it's less translucent, and it's also, I think it might also be less, I don't want to say shiny, but a little more satin, I guess, whatever. So that's flowing reasonably well, not like the cerulean blue, which is just fine because that's what I was looking for. I didn't want it to be that thin because this is going to be more of a sort of a first layer, thicker color kind of a thing. I get very excited about this. And now this is one of those, I don't want to call it a luxury color, but this is one that I sort of treated myself to. I said, okay, I've got all the other ones. I've been using them for years. Now it's time to fill out with some of the more interesting ones. And I'm going to continue to do that. You'll maybe see months from now or whatever, you might see 4 or 5 new colors. We'll make oil brushers out of them. Again, not that this process is anything difficult. It's certainly not. But that you can see the color and see my reaction to it. That's more important than actually this process itself. At least to me it is. And I think other people have also said the same thing. It's my reaction to things. Sometimes it's actually more valuable to them because then they can gauge their reactions. And should they be as surprised as me, or maybe they won't be so surprised because they saw me getting surprised and then they know to expect it. That is sort of the idea of these things, is to equip you guys with the, well, in some ways, making those mistakes or whatever, or miscalculations before you have to make those calculations. This is actually, it's filling this more than I thought. So I think that, well, this is just like we'd done this before, and I learned lessons from that first time around. I learned lessons from that. And oh, and by the way, those were some kind of like egg dispenser type things. If you're wondering what those containers were, those Tupperware type things, I had no idea. My sister was using them as pallets. She wasn't going to paint anymore, and she bequeathed those to me, and they just seemed to be handy for what I was doing. This is definitely going to be a, yeah, I'm thinking horse colors. I'm thinking I will use this on, oh, I've got one more of the, well, I have a bunch more of the Targaryen horses, but I've got one more from that initial batch that I was painting on the Twitch sessions that doesn't have any actual paint on it. So we will make that horse all this color with maybe some other accents on it, maybe even the white socks or whatever on one leg, but I think we're just about good to go here. You can see how this took a little less time than the first batch. So let's give ourselves a little bit of a cleaning around the edge of the lid here. Let us not forget our agitator. I think one's going to do it. In you go. Our stopper here, like so. And then our cap. Twist it in place. A shake. We hear that sound that we like. Blammo. We got, oh, look at those two. And these are actually, another reason, is these are perfect complements to each other. Just visually, these two colors go very well together. This, you can pull out the color wheel, do whatever. It's just from a visual standpoint, these two, there's a lot of logos. You'll actually see some team logos or whatever, or corporate logos that have these two colors together because they just kind of go nicely. So next up, we are going to, we'll focus on these two here. So these are the student grade Winsor. Look at all that. And I've hardly used this thing, and it's just like exploding out there. So anyways, we're going to get to these two guys, and we'll do them next. All right, so not only did I find myself another blister pack for mixing things, I also found a blister pack of sprues. And also these things, because now I don't know how many people, some of these are the older type figures. A lot of your historicals also come on things like this. You can see I've sawed off the figure from that base. And I don't think the whole thing's going to fit in there, but let's see if we can snip that in half. And I have my eyes closed, by the way, just so you know. Now maybe that's too big. I'm just going to, there we go. Let's see if it's going to fit in our container. So that's not going to fit. So I'd have to give it another slice here. Again, my eyes are closed, so this thing can bounce around as much as it wants. It doesn't matter, not going to hit me. So, okay, that will fit. Now we also, oh, look at this nice big old chunk of sprue right here. I spy with my little eye these two chunks. So I'm going to use these if they'll fit. Just again, get rid of some of that just to make sure. I kind of like these odd shapes like this because to me it grips the paint. It's actually going to move it around and actually do something to actually agitate the paint that's in there. So if you're wondering why that's why I'm thinking about that. All right, now I'm going to start off here. Let's get this stuff where it's out of the way. There we go. This is almost never going to use this on its own. It's just going to be mixed with other things. I'll mix it with some blues or greens or reds just to make them darker. Okay. I mean, look at that's some nasty stuff there around the edge of that. And that is really nasty. I get basically just kind of the linseed oil escaping there out of the container. Now obviously I don't think your higher grades are going to do that, but it's neither here nor there. So now to clean up a couple things I could do, I could grab something like this and just kind of try and scrape some of that away. That's really on there. Wow. It's not coming off very easy. There we go. Okay. Good to go now. I have no idea what's going to come out of this container. I'm going to put it in here since it's darker. Wow. I always go from the bottom as much as possible here. Now, of course, this is old. This is, 4 years, almost 4 years I've had this. This is most definitely by far the most I've ever used of it. All right. Let's just give that as good of a clean as we can. And well, it's a little better now. Okay. Here goes nothing. I'm gonna... Nope, I'm just gonna have to grab me another brush here. So give me 1 second. One more here. In with our thinning spirits. And now we shall mix. Wow. I mean, it's dark. I'll give you that. It certainly is dark. And I'm tempted to make this a thinner mix, actually. Boy, it's so not Payne's Gray. I mean, if you're looking for something that is black, like the black that you would paint around the edge of a base or something, I think the color that in the Pro Acrylic, it's called like it's called coal black. That's what it's called. It's just basically devoid of color, and that's what this is. That's why I would only mix this with something else. So let's say if I mix this with a ultramarine blue, well, I guess in some ways I'm creating a Prussian blue, but that's where you're going to see me employ this the most. Like I would mix this with that, and I get a nice dark version of that. So think of ivory black as an additive, maybe. Think of it that way. Like I said, me mixing this paint is probably not terribly super exciting. However, hopefully the scintillating analysis of colors and what their uses are makes up for the lack of visual entertainment. Although, dropping the brush on the cutting mat was probably entertaining too. Hopefully that is not going to happen too many more times. And what I'm seeing here is this is going back to those earlier things. Wow, I'm going to have to really put a bunch more in here. So I was not expecting that. This is way more than what I put into that brown matter on the other side. This is a lot more here. And what I'll try and do is I've got some other projects lined up that I think we could use some of these colors on, and I think they'll be interesting. There's some creature caster figures that I think this could be interesting if I mix it with a bunch of other stuff, like mixing this with some of the cadmium reds and yellows to see what kind of greens and browns that we get for, I think they call it not Nurgle, they call it Ruin, right? It's the little infantry guys that they came out with. Boy, still gonna have to do some more here. Like I said, gonna have to use maybe not the entire container, but pretty close to it to get all these done. And I'm gonna have to do another spritz of that still. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do one more here. Oh, no doubt about it. It's gonna require one more, maybe not quite as much as I put in there just now. It's fascinating to see this because I can't remember the last time I saw oil paint that was just black like this, not Payne's gray, which is completely, it just looks like a very dark, almost purple blue by comparison to this. But this could still have its place. I really do want to emphasize this is something that you add to things. Now, in vehicle terms, this wouldn't be so horrible for if it's really thinned down for maybe something like a panel line wash, putting in treads maybe, to get the deepest darks in those treads. I'm gonna have to put some more in here. Jeez Louise. That's not what I was expecting. Now, it's certainly much more, I mean, that is sort of super thick miniature paint consistency, but I want to get it to more of, well, actual miniature paint consistency. And hopefully this last round of mineral/white spirits will do the trick. It's interesting, there's not as much of the chunkiness though, especially not the chunky monkey of those two fluorescents. And remember, this is, who knows how old that stuff was before it got to me, and it is practically 4 years old now. So this is another thing. This is why I tell you oils will last. The status of that container does not belie what's going on with the paint here. I mean, you wouldn't think you could get this kind of smooth paint out of that old nasty container. And this will be, I'm not putting any more in here, so this is it. Whether it goes into the jar or not, we're going to find out. Now this with the cerulean blue will actually make a really nice gray. Again, an additive, not so much something on its own, just because it is devoid of any actual genuine color here. I know I keep saying I'm not going to do more, but I am still doing one more. So this is more like the fluorescence, where it took 25 minutes to mix 2 of them, And that was with me not even putting in the container. It took less than 20 minutes to do 2 of the regular colors and get them into the containers. So it took about 7-8 minutes less to do 2 colors because I didn't have to add as much of the white spirits. So that tells you, just like this. And look how thick that is. Jeez Louise, I'm going to have to add some more. It's just not quite thin enough to get down into that container yet. And which intrigues me to no end. I mean, maybe it's the little things that entertain me. I don't know. But that's fascinating. Okay, let's see what happens. Let's see what we get here. My goodness, this is like the black as night paint jar here. Okay. So unexpected. And that's why I do these things in front of you first instead of just, well, me in private. And I get to see exactly what's going to happen because there is something to me about that sort of spontaneous where I just react to something and get surprised. I guess because I want you to think that it's okay to have the same reaction, to be surprised by something. Because I have to say, what is it with kids and even, yeah, especially like little kids, where you play the peekaboo game? This is like peekaboo for adults right here. Well, man, that sounds a little weird. But we like surprises. Otherwise, we get really bored, which harkens back to a conversation that I did a little interview today with another person on the Patreon page. They were very nice to let me have an audience on their podcast, and we talked about that boredom that happens with painting, where it's the same thing. Oh, look, this is supposed to be my fun thing, which is kind of about as interesting and new every day as me going to my job every day, which then makes it a little bit less like entertainment and more like, well, your other job. So, and even if you are doing this for a living, well, why not make it a little more entertaining? Who knows? Maybe you get miniatures painted faster, you make more money. Or you get miniatures painted faster, you get more time to sleep. That's If I had more time, that's what I'd be doing, because sleeping is, well, ain't something that happens a lot here. But this is definitely, it's still going down the sides, but I'm looking down the center of that thing. Look at it. Look at that. You can still see all the way down to the bottom yet. So I really want to see what happens when I start mixing this with other colors. Now, when I mix this with anything like, say, the titanium white, then you're going to get those really dead, nothing type of grays. This actually mixed with this green could be kind of interesting. That should make an interesting gray. This mixed with white, not an interesting gray. I'll tell you that right now. That I can say with all certainty. It's hard to tell what's in there now. That's how black as night that is. Now, the other reason I'm doing this is that the Migamo oil brushes, the black is just really, it's super thin. It wasn't terribly helpful. It's almost nothing came out of the container. And I'm sure it was basically something like this, like an ivory black. All right, I'm going to see if I can scrape up some of the rest here. So now this one is definitely, the other one, the other green, I'm not going to be showing you the finishing process of it. I mean, I could probably leave this one too. It's not like it's going to dry. This is not drying anytime soon. I could probably leave that thing open for days and nothing's going to happen to it. However, I would like to just get this one out of the way. I do want to remember my sprue, though. Gotta remember that agitator. I mean, it's not like I couldn't put it in there after the fact. I could. but just a better idea to do that straight away. All right. You can tell by how much junk got around the outer end of that it's a little more difficult to get it down into there. So another note to self. All right, I'm going to take my paper towel here and give myself a cleaner edge on this. Drop one of my sprue chunks in there. I'm going to throw a second sprue chunk in there because I don't know. I can see this needing to be stirred maybe a little more often, shaken and stirred. Get this little cleaned off, and there we go. Give it our obligatory shake. I can really hear those two rattling around next to each other in there. So there's your ivory black. So different from the Payne's gray. And you can kind of see that bluishness versus this just has nothing. All right, time's a waste in here. What's going to happen with this stuff? And this is the permanent green hue. That's another way to tell sort of the cheaper colors is when the word hue is in there. It's sort of like, this is sort of like peanut butter, just maybe with not a lot of peanuts. That just kind of gives you a hint as to the student grade nature of things. All right. I'm just going to guess that this will take a lot, and by a lot, I mean a lot of this. How much does this look like? Does it look like a yellower version of our fluorescent green? It kind of does. And I realize that looks very liquidy right now, but we still have lots of chunkiness in here. So I'm glad I put a bunch of that stuff in because I think it's going to help break up those chunks a lot faster. And it starts to thick. Look at how that's starting to thicken so fast as we break up all these big old chunks. Remember, you thought it was just going to be like practically liquid, and it's thickening a lot in just a matter of seconds here. And there's a lot of chunks. So the ivory black, not so chunky. This is definitely the chunky variety right here, of peanut butter. And I might even need to add more of those white spirits, which even I did not think I was going to have to do. To me, this mixed with the cerulean blue could be interesting for some forms of, say, armor colors. I like to have that sort of seafoam green color, and this might give me more of a seafoam green. This actually with the cerulean blue might also provide a bit of a potential verdigris. So you could take the oils and do like a verdigris wash with them. Because yes, you can still use oils for weathering. Wow, look at how thick that is. That's not going anywhere. And it was practically just water not long ago. So I'm not actually going to make another container of the Payne's gray. I think this suffices. I think you get the point. And you just, when you see the Payne's gray in action, then you'll really get the. I don't think on camera here, just showing you a couple of jars next to each other is going to make that much of a impact. Certainly nowhere near as much of an impact as seeing me paint with it. And I think now we are successful in getting rid of all of the lumps for the most part. See, there's another one right there. Just showed up out of nowhere. Smush that. Oh, it's so close to miniature paint. I think now we've got it. I actually still do have some left in my container of white spirits there. Now, well, I guess if I had done the Payne's gray, that would have used what was left of it. there's still more oil experiments to go. I want to do the Aptalung paints again, give them another try, only this time with the, I'm looking at it right here, the matte effect thinner. Because people have asked about the Aptalungs, they have them. And remember, I just was not amused by that first time around with them. I was not super pleased with them. But we'll give them a second chance now that I know you're supposed to have that stuff. But like I said, it's when you have to have something to make a color work, that just, it's a little bit of a red flag for me in a way. I just kind of want something that kind of works without, well, you sort of need this too. Okay, yeah, it's definitely got a little bit more, as I see this, it's got more yellow in it than I thought it did. I thought it was much more of a bluish color, but like I said, mixed with the cerulean blue, that's kind of what I was targeting with this here, is mixing it with the cerulean blue, mixing it with the ochres and the umbers. And it's not so much that we want to make the green Nurgle guys. That's not really what it's about. What it's about is seeing what kind of interesting, well, grayish greens can we get. We mix this with some of like a cadmium red. What sort of a weird tan do we get from that? Or do we just get red-green or green-red? Because we did that on a Twitch stream. We made green-red and red-green, actually, now that I think about it. All right. Yeah, this is much thicker. It's way thicker than I expected it to be. And I added a ton of the white spirits to this. So again, it's another example where for sure I thought, maybe I won't need as much. And I had to keep adding it just like the ivory black because this has already taken much longer than the previous two colors. Now, is it because they're the student grade? I don't think so. I don't really think that's what it's about. It's getting there, and it's sinking down to the bottom. I'm gonna just get this moved into the corner here. Again, these old blister packs are just fantastic. The Reaper ones would work too. I just happen to have a bunch of the Dark Sword ones from doing the Muses and setting up a bunch of other Dark Sword things. I also, there's some other, well, there's a bunch of the Dark Sword dragons that I've been prepping, and these are not huge dragons. Well, a couple of them are big. Actually, there's one gigantic one, and that's going to also be painted in oils too. So you're going to see a lot of Dark Sword dragons not too long from now as we move along here. Well, there we go. Right, this is pretty much miniature paint consistency right here. So I think we were relatively successful in each one of these and getting something that's really close to that miniature paint. I'm always going to have my paper towels handy. It's not so much that I'm worried about getting oil paint on the jar, it's just that the label is going to have a tough time sticking if there's all that oil residue on there, which is another reason I'm not doing all the labels right now. I might do the one brown matter, and I'll do a final thought segment after this, just to kind of, you get to see what all the containers look like. And we'll do a little bit of a review. Now this one has the least amount of paint in it, probably of all the containers. I don't see myself using this one as much. Now bigger containers like this, if I'm doing it again, just knowing what I know now, my Payne's gray, my titanium white, and say especially the raw and burnt umber, those would go into those bigger containers because I just use them so much. One of the reasons I did them in the smaller containers is they take up less room on screen and in my area here. So what I'm trying to do, an army painting thing, and I've got a bunch of miniatures out here. It's nice to not have all that space taken up. It's the reason why I got this instead of this. And this is a small container. I used to have the big old container out here, and that just it took up so much space. All right, we're good to go now. Agitator time. Let's see if we can get a couple of these guys to fit down in there. There you go. I'm going to throw a couple of them in there. Plus this. Boom. Put our, after a little bit of a clean here, throw our topper on there. That just snaps. Get my fingers a little bit. Actually, I'm going to use a sponge here because my fingers are so dirty right now. Hear the sound. Boom. We hear the shake. And there we go. So what we're going to do, we'll throw the label on the brown matter, and we'll just, again, a little final thoughts, and then you can see what the jars look like. We'll do that next. Well, we've got all those paints into our containers here. Mission accomplished. There's your fluorescence, and here is your sort of normal high-grade cerulean blue and brown matter. And then we've got our old Winton colors here, the ivory black and your permanent green light. Now we do have a label here. This is one of my original labels. I think I've got it cut to size. It's just simple printer paper, nothing fancy at all. You could just handwrite labels. You don't need labels. You could just take a, what would you say, one of those, not a dry erase pen, but some kind of magic marker or something like that, and you just write the darn name on there. This, to me, was more for you guys so that you could see what this is on camera. It's way easier for you to see what that is than just something scrawled on there. I know, because I had to use certain other companies, their test things with just stuff scrawled by hand. So I will make labels for these guys so you can see those too. But hey, all excited for using this. My fluorescents. Now, if you're one of the things I had kind of thought about, especially for the fluorescents, is one of those, so the creature caster, the death elemental, right? I might even do a little quick video here of sculpting the base. I'm going to take epoxy sculpt and sort of fill out this base so that these rocks kind of go out this way instead of just using rocks. I never show you how to sculpt things. I'm always just kind of dropping rocks on there. So maybe we'll try and sculpt something here. Maybe we'll even sculpt some of these guys. I don't know. But we'll do something like that, and we'll use the oils on it as well, especially see what our fluorescent green can do, and probably even combine it with our cerulean blue. As always, I want to thank you guys for supporting these videos. It makes a huge difference. I mean, we would not really be surviving at all, actually, without this, even because I cannot stay up. Even I can't paint fast enough to do enough commissions. So this is very helpful. Those are two different grains, varied. This is a little bit, this actually will go nicely with this. So, and even with our cadmium. I'll get labels on those guys. I'll get you like a final picture, something like that. And then I'll see you in the next one where we actually get to use these guys. And, you want to go on Twitch too. It's a great place to be working. Now, look here. We just did a couple of more of these on Twitch. So here's a couple of those horses. You can see all kinds of nifty blends on those guys, right? And this is actually probably the first horse that I'm going to try my brown matter on, because he's just waiting for more paint. So I will see you guys on the next one, and thanks again.